I think Jaden Ivey is the guy I would take at number 4, assuming the rest of the draft goes as expected. So at the end of the day, hey, he ended up picking the guy I would have taken.
So then why do you think he's the right guy for Sacramento?
Yeah. There's definitely some complexity with Jaden Ivey, more so than most best players available, in a normal conversation year. But his ability to score at the rim, his athleticism, his insane quickness, his whole skill set is just excellent for a combo guard. And he showed he was able to break down defenses all season long at Purdue. He showed huge improvements in his deep shooting from his freshman to sophomore year. And most importantly for Sacramento, especially in the context of the existing guards they have on this roster, he showed that he has a ton of off-ball skills that would really make me excited to see him alongside De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell. He was an efficient catch-and-shoot shooter on good volume. He was dangerous as a scorer off of screens and off cuts to the basket. I really do feel like we always see these guards, these electric guards, and think, man, they're going to need the ball in their hands to be effective. No, there were plenty of times at Purdue where he really showed, and the team was built around him to do so, that he could play off of the ball. So I think he'd be a good fit in Sacramento, assuming that his shooting continues to improve.
Yeah, I'm super intrigued by him. I'm very curious to see how fast he could have an impact if the Kings drafted him. Like, is he a guy year one that can impact things? I'm not totally sure on that. I think there's definitely some issues defensively, but I also see the defensive potential. Like, you just see the elite athleticism, his ability, even when he takes weird routes around screens, he can recover sometimes because he is so athletic. He's long. He could block some shots. How do you view him like day one? Do you think he could impact the Kings year one in the NBA?
I think he will definitely be an impact player pretty early in his career on offense. I agree with you, though. The concern is the defense, just because he had his highlights for sure.
Yeah,
there were moments where he was absolutely engaged. He shadowed guys well. He showed up in big moments with some big defensive plays, but on the whole, I think the word I just keep coming back to is inconsistent on defense. And that's a scary word for Sacramento.
Yes.
It's a really scary word. He has the tools, but we've said that for years about players on the Kings. They've got the tools. Why aren't they putting it together? I think one thing is I've been listening to quite a few of his draft interviews, and he always mentions defense pretty early on there. So he knows this is a weakness. And I'm sure you guys saw that he said he's been watching Davion Mitchell defensive tape to help him get better there. So what better way for him to get better on defense than to be working with Davion Mitchell?
Mike Brown.
Yeah. At the end of the day, he's not going to be a guy I'm expecting to come in and make a huge two-way impact, but first couple of months, maybe he's coming off the bench, leading the second unit offense, then just gets more and more responsibilities. At the end of the day, I think that unless one of Jabari Smith Jr., Chet Holmgren, or Paolo Banchero is the one that falls to 4, Jaden Ivey's got the best star upside left in the draft, in my opinion. And he's the pretty easy selection in my book.
Yeah. So do you think there's any chance that he could be a top 3 pick still then?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of weird that we've all gravitated to him being the 4th pick because, so much of this is there's 4 guys here. All of them have a real case to be in that top 3, maybe even a real case to be in that top 2. One of them's going to go 4, but I don't necessarily think of that as an insult to any one of those players. Is it possible that Oklahoma City or Houston says, no, we think Jaden Ivey's the best player? Absolutely. It's just, if I'm going to bet on it, I would think that all of those teams probably go the forwards and bigs. But heck, Jaden Ivey may not even be on the board when the Sacramento Kings are selected. So
that'd be interesting. I mean, you're right. We spend so much time, looking at these mock drafts, and we take it as like, hey, this is what it's going to be. shit changes every year
Yeah.
in the NBA
Yeah.
draft. So there's always some sneaky thing that changes last second. Last year, you think about Scotty Barnes as a Jalen Suggs dynamic that changed with Toronto. With Jaden, what's your biggest like long-term concerns about his game?
Well, it would be the defense. I think there are some things on offense that I definitely want to see him improve early in his career. He was pretty inconsistent as a playmaker. It was the same kind of thing with his defense. Like he'd have these passes where, wow, that was an incredible pass. How did he see that lane open up? And then he just miss really obvious ones, or just, his decision making, especially in the NCAA tournament loss to St. Peter's, was pretty bad. The other thing is that he is a two-way scorer at this point, or two-level scorer at this point. He either gets to the basket and he can do that with incredible efficiency, or he's taking three-point shots. He doesn't have any real in-between game. And as De'Aaron Fox has shown us, there's nothing more valuable for a guy with those athletic tools to develop some sort of mid-range, a floater, a runner, something like that, that's just going to keep the defenses on their back foot and trust that, hey, he's not just going to get to the basket. So I think those are both kind of low-hanging fruits for him. He can improve on both of those, but I wouldn't want to draft him and expect that, hey, he's going to be the point guard of my future. He's not going to be the primary initiator. I think he's going to be best as a combo guard next to really good playmakers. And fortunately for Sacramento, they've got two of those already.
Yeah, and I mean, Ivy played with a big guy who could pass the ball really well in college, and you think about the potential there with Sabonis, and I think that, looking at the fit, everyone talks about the fit with Ivy. There's some clunkiness there. If the shooting is not one, you need Fox to be more consistent shooting. Hopefully Sabonis is able to stretch the floor a little more this year, and then Ivy has to prove that he can shoot at the NBA level. So there's some spacing things for sure. But if like Fox does improve and Sabonis does improve, you think about Sabonis's ability to move the ball, the potential of that Fox Sabonis pick and roll, and what Ivy could do off of that. It's pretty intriguing.
Yeah. But Bryant too, and with that, because it's like you also have to have the will, the determination, the basketball IQ to understand when to cut and, how to get better at things, especially on the defensive end. And I guess sometimes I get all caught up in the potential, even though that's what the draft is all about, right? Like in all these guys, we're looking at the potential. But with Jaden Ivey, because everyone's not so sure that right away his defense obviously is going to be where it needs to be. How do you feel about him mentally getting to those places with his cutting and the will to get better on defense and everything?
Well, I'm not so much worried about the off-ball skills, because that really was a big role that he played at Purdue. He really did get used to playing next to other ball handlers. Defense, though, I was on the Kings Herald show with Jerry Reynolds the other night, and Jerry Reynolds pointed out Matt Painter is one of the best defensive coaches out there. And if he couldn't get Jaden Ivey dedicated on defense, that is definitely a little concerning. It wouldn't be easy for Mike Brown. I'm sure that, there's something in the back of Mike Brown's head like, boy, I'm coming to one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and they're really going to draft another guy with defensive question marks. But at the end of the day, there's so much in the draft that there's not going to be a player that fixes everything. And at the end of the day, I'm always just going to lean toward the guy who I think has the best all-around potential, the best prospect. And for me, Jaden Ivey's complex. Jaden Ivey may not reach his ceiling here in Sacramento. The fit complications alongside a guy very similar to him in De'Aaron Fox. Yeah. Davion Mitchell's going to demand playing time. It's not super clean, and there's definitely some realm of thought thinking, how are we going to take a guy based on potential when we're not maybe putting him in the best position to reach that potential? Yeah, I can understand that argument. At the end of the day, I'm still going to take the talent. The Kings don't have that many chances to swing for the stars like this. I think Jaden Ivey can be that guy.
Yeah, you don't get that many chances to move up in the draft ladder. We've seen that in recent years. The one time they did, they kind of had that thought process with Luka and Fox. Like, oh, can they work together? And they decide, oh, let's not go with Luka. We know how that turned out. I don't necessarily look at this Ivy thing as a Luka
No.
Bagley situation
No.
at all.
Definitely not.
Luka to me was like, he's going to be good. I know it. Ivy, yeah, like you said, it's definitely complex for sure. And you could see why maybe his reps would be like, hey, it's probably not our preferred destination. We like somewhere where he could, have a significant role from day one, as opposed to a situation in Sacramento where you got Sabonis with the ball, Fox with the ball, Davion. It isn't the cleanest. And I think that's the other thing with Sacramento it's so tough to figure out, is because of the layers here, right?
Yeah.
The Monty McNair going into the final year of his contract, this whole notion they got to make the playoffs next year. And okay, well, does that change his thinking? I feel like the last two drafts, Monty went with who he thought was the best guy available there. I don't know if his thinking changes because of the contract and the pressure to get in the playoffs.